DJ LeRoy.
NightWatchman, how you doing, buddy?
I'm well. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. So, I look at you as the technical expert for Soul Lounge Primetime, right?
Okay. Now I'm scared.
Well, having said that, normally we like to be ahead of the curve. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Where is this going? I feel like I'm walking through a minefield here.
No, it's very gentle. It's absolutely very gentle. But I do believe that next year we're going to get in front of Pride Month as opposed at the back end. How's that?
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
So all right. Was that painless or what?
Oh yeah. No problem. No problem. Next year we'll be in front of it. Check.
Okay. Got it.
Okay.
Well. Having said that, the first guest I'd like to bring out is someone that I really have kind of like known, I guess, through the other organization that I work through, and you know what that is, right?
Yes.
Harlem. Okay. So with that, we've been able to provide some support, and we've been able to provide support, because they just do great work, and that can only be Miss Carmen Neely. Bring her out. Yes, Carmen.
Hey, how are you all?
Good,
Hey,
good.
Carmen.
Welcome to Soul Lounge Primetime. And I cannot believe that NightWatchman has said that this is the first time he's actually seen you face to face. Is that correct?
That is
Yes.
correct.
But we've been Facebook friends for years.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. Well, welcome for sure.
Thank you.
And you know what, NightWatchman, next guest that I want to bring out, you know what? The name may be Richard, but we call him actually Uncle Richard, and that's Richard Pelzer. Bring him up.
All right.
Yeah. Richard, yes.
Everyone.
Oh, good, my brother. So you know what? I'm feeling more and more confident about the show, NightWatchman. What about you?
I was always confident about it.
Okay, I give a little side eye back there. Okay. Oh man, but funny enough, but Carmen, first time I actually got involved with Harlem Pride, it was actually through this gentleman, and that of course could be none other than John Reddick. Hey, John, what's up, buddy? How you doing? Is he on mute? He sounds like he might be on mute.
Yeah, we don't.
Okay, here we are.
Oh, there we go.
Okay,
Yes,
there we go.
So he got that new technology. That's what's going on.
Yeah, if he's the uncle, I don't even want to ask where
I am. But of course, remember, last but certainly not least, this woman first. You remember I would go there for my brunch treats. You know, we're talking B squared. We're talking Billy's Black. It can only be Miss Adriane Ferguson. Bring her out now. Come on. NightWatchman, where are you? Go ahead. You got that. You got that one. Oh, NightWatchman. Okay, there we go.
All right. Here
Hey, Adriane, how you doing?
I'm good. Hi, everyone.
Good morning.
How are you?
All right.
This feels like a good old family reunion right now.
Exactly.
So you know what, NightWatchman, let's get it popping.
You brought the potato salad, right, Curtis?
Well, I heard that yours has raisins in it, so
we're firing shots right now. Okay, you might get a couple of raisins hitting you in the head today. So.
well, Carmen, it is so good to see you. So,
Thank you.
So I understand that you made a trip to the West Coast. Tell me about that.
Well, I am out here in good old Riverside, California, out here to support a friend who is opening up a community space that's called Project Legacy. It will take people who are HIV positive from A through Z and helping them get back on their feet and living productive lives. So they have transitional housing, fitness, mental health, education, personal finance, all wrapped up into a lovely campus, and the opening is today. So I have flown out here to help support my friend.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Now, and specifically, that's also, I guess, speaking to what you're trying to develop in Harlem. Is that correct?
That's correct. So under construction, last time I looked, which was a few days ago, 7 stories are up for the Harlem Same Gender Loving LGBTQ Center, coming around the 4th quarter of next year.
Beautiful.
And we're looking forward to opening our temporary space, which will be about 3,000 square feet. And then in another 2 years, the 3rd and final tower of the overall project, which is Marcus Garvey Village, will have us moving into our final 20,000 square feet. So we're excited, looking forward to that, providing some more programs and services to the community under the Harlem Center, as we call it, umbrella, and also having it be, because it'll be pretty much the only center of its kind in Harlem. And we want the entire community to be comfortable joining us there, understanding that it's definitely same gender loving LGBTQ focused. But as I like to say, as a former high school teacher, if you're offering a GED program and you don't mind using a rainbow pencil, come on through.
Excellent, excellent. And Richard, we met a few years back through a common friend, and before that, I know we were moving in some of the same circles there. But nice to finally have you on Soul Lounge Primetime, and also you were definitely touted as one of the people I need to speak to about Harlem Pride and beyond. So, Richard, tell us.
Thank you very much. Greetings, everyone. My name is Richard Pelzer. I have a company called Mega Personalities. We're a business development management company. And back in 2013, we had the pleasure of working with all of the folks at Harlem Pride on an initiative called Many Faces, One Dream. And it was an opportunity for a lot of same gender loving LGBT Black queer business owners and creatives to be able to tap into the revenue and the money from the Small Business Administration. And it really gave me an opportunity to really start to look at my community as a whole, and working with Carmen and all of the folks at Harlem Pride and LGBT faith leaders of African descent. We actually had over 250 people across the city to come to Brooklyn for a 2-day conference. And out of that, we had just about 20 small business owners or creatives in the Harlem area. And we started an initiative called Harlem 2020. When 2020 came, and a lot of folks were really talking about the name, we switched it up a little bit, and now it's called Harlem CLX, which is Create, Learn, and Experience. So
nice.
over down, and what I like to actually do is to be able to connect people, especially creative people, and really figure out ways that they would be able to collaborate together. So we work with a lot of small business owners, a lot of nonprofits in the Harlem area, and we have a lot of tourists that come and visit. So the idea is to be that second set of hands on that marketing and promotion. So
beautiful
initiative, and that's what I've been working on for the past couple of years.
Nice. John Reddick, my man. Yes. So like I said, the first time I got in touch with Harlem Pride, you were, I believe, at the helm or close to it. And, also learning that you're an architect out of Yale. You got to tell me the journey, John, please.
Well, I came to New York in 1980. Was involved, was a gentleman named Robert LaPrince, who was very much involved in theater and starting his own arts organization, a Morehouse person. And he was really the first one to introduce me into the LGBT community. For the most part, people who were more in the arts. He was really much focused on the arts. And later on, as we were looking at doing some celebrations in the neighborhood, Carmen actually brought me into the group of Harlem Pride. There was 4 of us initially, and it's nice to see Adriane, because she was one of the group of us who did the first Harlem Pride event on 119th Street. That's about 14 years ago, 13, 14 years ago. And people thought, oh, this isn't going to work. And, people were projecting there'd be problems, but it was a wonderful event. We had political support. I mean, I have to say, for the Harlem electeds, Bill Perkins, and I remember in that first year, but they've always been very supportive over time. So there was a sense in those efforts that we were giving the community a sort of voice and a visibility that maybe hadn't existed before. And it's great to see how the organization has continued to be like a beacon in terms of pulling together other groups and looking at the center facility that's coming on board. I mean, it's great to sort of, as one of the OGs in the
Yeah.
early part, to see this kind of growth and service to the community.
Excellent. Wow. And that's right. Embrace it, John. You are one of the OGs. Okay. And Adriane, like I said, my wife will tell you, I like breakfast or brunch all day. Why switch it up? Okay. Just so now having, of course, brunch Harlem, I'm all in. But having said that, and for the ending of Pride, 119th Street was lit. So please, you must tell us about that.
Yes. So I feel like John Reddick. I'm one of the OGs of when Harlem Pride first started. It was a great journey, a great experience, and I'm glad to see all of the things come to fruition, which we all need in our community. So I commend Carmen on being the champion in that, and making sure that the community gets its needs met. But yeah, I mean, it started from me just, doing my little social thing. And next thing I know, I'm like, okay, I'm going to open a restaurant. And next thing I know, there are people coming and eating and enjoying. And then it's like, oh, I look up and it's 17 years later. And I'm like, oh my God.
Wow.
What did I do? But it's been an absolute joy to be in the community, to be a part of the community. I am Harlem raised, born. So it is wonderful to see the transition of Harlem to what it is. Originally, in opening the restaurant as Billy's Black, it was more about community affair, just having a space to belong. And that was the intention in opening the doors, because food and family go together.
Yes.
And it's really just an extension of family. Rebranding again in 2016 to kind of give a elevated experience was the second goal, and we've achieved that. And now, I have my partner, Joe Morris, who came to me with the concept of, people love to turn up and have a good time for brunch. Why not do it every day? And I said, you know what? Hey, let's do it.
Nice.
So here we are, and he does magnificent events. So he is at the full helm of the block party that we've had across several years. But once he's come on last year and this year, it has been absolutely phenomenal. He is great at bringing the people to the yard, if you will. And we just have to make sure that we keep community first. And yeah, I mean, Harlem Pride has been instrumental in making sure that everyone in the community stays connected. So yeah, here we are in 2023, and more things are to come.
Love it, love it. And you know what? Absolutely. In terms of safe spaces. I remember at one point, and help me out, everyone. Uh, I remember there was at least an evening when Lennox Lounge was open, that there could be a gathering. But there was that, let me back up. Was there ever a particular, let's say, safe space that everyone maybe knew about, but it wasn't necessarily advertised? Carmen, talk. Tell me
Oh,
about it.
well, I'm not aware of
Hmm.
if Lennox Lounge had a particular night.
Hmm.
That would be before my time a little bit, I believe.
Gotcha.
So I'm not sure if maybe anyone else on the panel is aware.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
yeah, John, what do you remember? Uh, you're mute, John.
It went for a couple of years at Lennox Lounge. They had a night, and there was a place called Berlin on 125th Street, and there was a variety of places in Harlem. But you could meet at church. You could meet a lot of different places. So I mean, there were places that were specific for that, and then there's places where it happened, just naturally.
Gotcha. Richard, what do you remember?
I moved to New York from Cleveland, Ohio in 1994. And, just coming to New York from the Midwest, I mean, it was the big city. So I was excited about just being, a part. But being and living in Harlem, and I've lived in Harlem longer than I lived anywhere else. Creating spaces and places for us just to be able to one, represent and be ourselves, I think is really important. So I love the journey. I love the stories that are out there, past, present, and the ones that we're going to be creating. So I just think it's actually dope.
Excellent. And Adriane, talking about that safe space. So, did you know about any safe spaces before you then embarked on your journey with Billy's Black and your other entrepreneurship type ventures?
Um, like Richard said, there really are spaces that are created for what it is that we need to
Hmm.
represent ourselves. So some of them really are organic and otherwise. Yeah, there have been a few. I can't name uh, any offhand,
Hmm.
um, but there was always a place to go in Harlem, and that's been the case for Harlem for years, since the early 1900s. Harlem has always been the hot spot if you want to enjoy yourself and be free,
Hmm.
um, because even in the early 1900s, not even inclusive of um, the LGBTQ community, it was even just for people of color.
Hmm.
So you have to think of what Harlem really represents, in the sense that it's always been a place where you have a safe place to be
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
to exercise your creative self.
Yes. And you know what? And Night Watchman, I guess I'll bring you out. Certainly, we know the Harlem Renaissance.
Hmm.
But the LGBTQ community was all up in there, but we never really hear about the significant contributions of that community. So go ahead, Night Watchman.
Well, I mean, certainly we know people such as Langston Hughes. There was, and I think that Adriane framed it particularly, that there was just a safe space for diversity. So I'm sure that if we kind of go back through the annals of the Renaissance, we can find more people who we know. I don't remember the names offhand, but I've gone through a lot of that history, and there are certainly people who were identified that way, and people knew it, and it wasn't a problem,
Hmm.
and that was why Langston Hughes, when he came here, and stayed in Colombia for like 2 months and moved to Harlem, because that was his game plan all along, because he knew this is a space he needed to be in. And Harlem has always been that home to not just us as a people, but the diverse, pardon, the overused metaphor, but the rainbow of diversity that we have within our culture has always been home here in Harlem.
Excellent. Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead, Richard. We got you.
Jump in real quick. I mean, the great thing about storytelling, and I had the pleasure of listening to John Reddick, who is actually one of the historians here in Harlem. I think it's really important for us to be able to share those stories on a continuous basis, so folks would be able to know who these people are and their names. I'm also a part of the Gatekeepers, and if you are on 125th Street, we actually have banners that run from Morningside all the way to 12th Avenue that celebrate, the Harlem Renaissance, and we call it Harlem Renaissance 2.0. That folks will be able, within the community today, will be able to look up and to be able to see some same gender loving LGBT people that lived in Harlem or are associated with Harlem. And this year, if I'm not mistaken, is our 5th year, but it's our third edition. So hopefully next year we'll be able to keep those banners up on 125th Street.
Well, Mr. Historian, you've been called out. So
well, he makes a very interesting point. If you think of science being the sort of emblem of the 20th century, then the other side of that science is spirituality, and Harlem presented that in abundance. So that's the reason all these European artists, from Gertrude Stein to Matisse or whatever, if they're coming to New York, they're running to Harlem to see that energy, and our energy, like someone mentioned earlier, is from all over. Like some people are from Mississippi, but some people are from the Caribbean and other places. And that dialogue is happening in America really for the first time in a big way in Harlem. So it was not only liberating for us, but it was liberating for the 20th century. And so a lot of these places, artists like Richard Barthé and some of the other people, Langston Hughes and people we talked about, they were much more integrated into the culture than has been presented. And so I think the challenge of museums and other institutions in looking at history in a more fair and broader way, you will see these people be much more significant players. They sort of say this was the girlfriend or the boyfriend of this person, but they weren't in those circles just for that reason. They were in that circle for their cultural knowledge or skill, and so that other part I think also should be highlighted. There was like a community of players of like minds that were really giving energy to one another that doesn't get talked about as much as it should.
Yes. And so I guess one of the other elephants in the room we know is Hollywood's representation. Okay. Do we see ourselves? One of the things I will give FX, I believe it was FX, with Pose, putting Pose out there. But we know that that's not the only representation of us. Okay, and having said that, what do you think? How has Hollywood necessarily treated us in terms of film and or documenting our journey? Carmen.
Well, I would say there are some things, like you mentioned, Pose, and that's more recent. And but when it comes to various segments, you really don't see as much for Black or Latino lesbians per se. There have been shows like L Word, and you might have one or two characters. You have New Wave coming out with 20s, where there's one main character, and then some that may be on the spectrum. But in terms of just a full-blown show, you don't really see it. The most recent representation I could say specifically for Black lesbians would be the show Harlem that shouted out Harlem Pride.
Yes.
It was wonderful. And they have one character out of this group of friends, which I think is perhaps representative of a group of friends. And one of them is a lesbian, that sort of thing. But overall and generally speaking, our representation still lags behind what you see in the majority. And so I think if we talk about the full spectrum of same gender loving LGBTQ identities, we're still, as is typical, in the margins of what's available There are some peeking through, but still very much in the margins. And that's why with Harlem Pride, and I do want to just shout out, this is a family reunion. Adriane and John were with us from the beginning, and Richard joined us, he said, with many faces, one dream. So this is really great to see people who have been in and through Harlem Pride, and that we're continuing to grow and support the community. So I just wanted to give those shout outs. But yes, in terms of representation, I think we have a long way to go. We have yet to see a show similar to L Word, which for, specifically for lesbians, L Word was the pivotal show.
Yes.
And you had these one character, maybe a girlfriend, maybe not. They pretty much rode on the coattails of Jennifer Beals being a biracial person and also portraying a biracial character, but really treating the full gamut of same gender lovingness, LGBTQ, that intersection. We're not seeing it to the degree as we see the majority of offerings that may portray lesbians. So there's still work to do, and support to be given, because there are artists out there. If you go to YouTube, you'll find some, low budget, but not necessarily because they're low budget doesn't mean that they're not well made. There's some series that are very well done, and unfortunately none come to mind right now, but that are very well done for the budgets you can guess that they have in terms of their storytelling. So I think what we have to do as a community is make sure we support these artists and their work, and try to promote them as much as we can with whatever tools we have within our organizations and connections.
Yes, and that was a good one, Carmen, because certainly with Harlem, they did give the shout out to Harlem Pride, and also have that one character. But I also noticed there was some type of, am I going to call it sexual fluidity, because you had also one of the other characters entering into a lesbian relationship. I don't know what, to try it out, a test ride or something like that.
Well, sexual fluidity is a thing. And so I think that character is just portraying, hey, I found an attraction in this person, and I'm open enough, comfortable enough, and authentic enough to pursue that. And I think that's one thing that I do see today. The younger generation is definitely much more comfortable speaking up and saying who they are and owning that. And I think that's wonderful. My generation, and I think generations before me, weren't as comfortable doing that in society because we weren't as visible.
Right.
I know I didn't recognize anyone as being a same gender loving woman until I got to college. And then the women I'm speaking of weren't even college students. Wow. Now you have, like I said, I'm a former high school teacher. You have kids in middle school that are owning their budding sexuality. They may or may not have a solid identity yet, but they're working on it, and they're fine with that. They're not closeted. Some parents are not supportive, some are, but the visibility is out there unlike any other time, and particularly with my personal experience during my generation. So I think we have hope, absolutely.
Gotcha. Wow.
And I agree with what Carmen's saying. I mean, film and all that is show business. And they follow the politics. They don't lead the politics, they follow it. And all the storylines we're talking about would have never happened if the cultural politics hadn't changed and they sort of forced themselves. And I do think with like YouTube and these other sources where people can get in, the movies are really about the story, and the stories would really make a success. And I think the more people have these opportunities to sort of find their voice and find an audience, you're going to see more variation in the storylines that are produced by larger studios.
So, John, let me ask you this. You talk about the politics. Now we've seen the politics shifting hard to the right. And so what are your feelings about that? And is that, number one, is that going to affect how we see representation? And number two, just in general, how is that affecting, our community here in Harlem?
Well, we have an election coming up in a year and a half, a presidential election. and you see what the Supreme Court just did yesterday, and
Yes.
you see, you see all the groups have been targeted, whether they're the Jewish community, the African American community, the LGBT community.
Yeah.
Here, instead of like complaining about the person we don't want to vote for, you need to just get out and lobby and get the middle ground voter and candidates out there that are going to be supportive of like an American agenda. These people talking about America aren't serving America. And I think instead of being focused on particular personalities and all that, I think it does us well to get organized and, speak from the interests that are being, demolished by these politics to advance candidates and move forward people that are supportive. I think we get drained a lot of energy focused on, one or two particular people, when I think the abundance of the country, I think, is another way. But I think we have to work to make sure they turn out and vote and feel that their issues are being addressed as we all are being addressed together.
Absolutely. One of the things I heard you say, was it you, NightWatchman? I'm not sure, but talked about, let's say, family acceptance. So let's say Richard, coming from Cleveland. Cleveland is not a big city like New York, but it's a city, no less. What was when you came out? How were your parents and or other relatives within that tribe there accepting of you, and let's say your environment in the city itself?
Well, my experience, and I'll use a lot of I statements, I think is maybe a little bit, I don't want to say so much different than a lot of other folks, but it wasn't a big issue or a problem for me. One, I always knew who I was, and I had the opportunity to explore and share that experience. And it was always affirming and positive for me. So I got a chance to kind of walk through life a little bit different than some of the other stories that I actually hear from other folks. So for me, it wasn't a negative thing, it was a positive thing. And I always wanted to be able to share that experience with others. Because again, representation really does matter. We actually talked about Hollywood earlier, and Hollywood, as we know, in that system has been, the same for 120 years. It's changing now. Hollywood isn't California. It's a global thing with numerous stories where people are building careers, businesses off of that. So I agree with Carmen. Like, there are ways that one, we would be able to support these artists, and two, we would be able to start to see new experiences. I always try to share with people, there's gold in that pink dollar, and it's really up to us to be able to start to mine for that, to be able to actually have our own financial base to greenlight our own films and our own projects.
Yes, indeed. So now, of course, Adriane, I mentioned, of course, Richard, Cleveland originally. You born and bred Harlem. I, on the other hand, not Wakanda BX all day, right? But so having said that, when you then affirmed yourself, did you still feel the love from your community and your family?
Yes. I think the biggest thing was in growing up that for myself, there in my road to discovery, there wasn't an announcement, meaning that I was fine with who I was. It wasn't brought to the forefront to say, this is who I am, and I need to tell everyone. Not to say that I was not living out loud. I was just living, my life, and it didn't need for me. There was no need for me to rock the boat as long as I was being me. Being 16 and raised by my grandparents primarily, having that conversation was not a good conversation at that time to have. So for me, it was about me going out and discovering who I was on my own, and knowing that when I came home, I was still loved and nurtured
Mm-hmm.
for just being a person, not
Right.
necessarily a straight person or a gay person or a non-binary person or whatever titles or labels. You know, at home you're just really who you are to your family.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get. I mean, it was just known, you know, pretty much like John said, when in the early 1900s you had James Baldwin and
Mm-hmm.
Langston Hughes. Everybody just knew who they were, but they just
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a conversation about it. It was
Right.
okay. It was fine. I think everyone is okay as long as no one is being what's the word I want to say, um, overt in the sense that they're not um, bothering anyone else. They're not
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
necessarily quote unquote coming on to somebody who you obviously know is not,
Mm-hmm.
um, and creating friction where there is none.
Yes, absolutely, and that's one of the things, you know, kind of like seeing some of the how should I say, some of the misconceptions out there that somehow, some way, that you can be taught to be gay, you know, that somehow you can be converted, and that it is indeed a choice. So, is that any of the stuff that you guys, you know, growing up had to confront? That, you know what, I hear that it's bad. So you know what? I don't want to be this way, and
But
yet they
let's
go
talk
ahead.
about the elephant in the room.
Go ahead. Let me
And
hear it.
John mentioned the word before, the church.
Ah,
So
yes,
the
yes,
church has been a place
yes.
where it's sometimes a safe space, sometimes not. Sometimes it's okay to be in the choir but not be out. So let's talk. Let's unpack that a little bit.
Well, for me in New York, AIDS
Mm-hmm.
changed everything. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you could see it wasn't just florists and hairdressers that were dying, you know, across the spectrum of whatever institution you were engaged in. You realize it was a much more broader swatch of the culture. And for me, that was, I think for the country, it was a game changer. The idea of being closeted and everything seemed ridiculous in that environment. And I just think, you know, like COVID, you know, it turned certain things a different way culturally because it happened. I think the same thing with AIDS in the culture. It made a real difference in how people saw themselves, and the ridiculousness of, you know, being closeted and all that just seemed, you know, if you're Calvin Klein and, you know, you're trying to pretend to be one thing when your friend, you know, your workforce, your friends and people are dying. I think it just changed things.
Hmm.
Wow. Yes, indeed. Anyone else?
Well, my story is more of the typical story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I come from a home full of love, so let me just say that up front.
Mm-hmm.
However, my father is a minister
Oh.
and my mother is a teacher. So
Wow.
while I didn't grow up hearing, oh, it's bad, it's this, that, the other, I didn't hear that, you know, I didn't know one way or the other how my parents would feel. So I
Mm-hmm.
chose not to test the waters while I lived under their roof. So I'll never know exactly how they would have reacted.
Right.
But I started realizing I was a little different from what they expected me to be early on.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I played the role because I just thought, I want to please my parents. So I
Yes.
dated, you know, dated boys throughout high school and initially in college. And I was one of those ones that tried to see if I could find the quote unquote right guy, which
Mm-hmm.
wasn't happening. And then toward my middle 20s, I just decided, you know what? Let me just get out the dating game for a minute and deal with myself. So I
Mm-hmm.
finally came out at 27.
Okay. Wow.
And when I had the conversation with my parents, they were taken aback because, of course, up till that point, as far as they knew, you know, I dated guys, they met some of the boyfriends, that whole thing. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you can't be honest with others until you're honest with yourself.
Yes.
It's been an
Yes.
evolving process. I'm not going to say that they necessarily are happy
Mm-hmm.
about the totality of who I am and
Mm-hmm.
my authenticity, but they love me. I'm their daughter. So there's definitely love there. And then we
Yes.
have conversations. Sometimes they have questions. I do my best to explain. I remember early on, and this is a anecdote that I try to tell other people that may be helpful. So I want to share it here. You know, in my family, ice cream is a big thing. My mother really loves coffee ice cream. My father loves pistachio, and I love butter pecan. You know, that's a typical Southern butter pecan. And research the history of butter pecan, you all. It's very interesting and why that's so big in the Southern Black communities. But at any rate, if there are those three, I'm always going to choose butter pecan. Dad's always going to choose pistachio. Mom's always going to choose coffee. To the extent as if our favorite isn't there, those other ice creams will go untouched by the others. So you know, what is it? When did you choose to have coffee ice cream as your favorite? When did you to have pistachio as your favorite? Or is it just something that is? You know, how did you decide? My father has a seafood allergy. Did you choose to have, you know, seafood allergy? You were just born that way. So when I broke it down like that, I said, yes, I could make myself, because, you know, they were saying, well, you dated guys all this time. Like, what's different now? I said, you know, I can make myself eat coffee ice cream. I can make myself eat pistachio. And pistachio is okay with me. But if I have a choice, I'm going to choose butter pecan every single time. So I use that to explain to them what my feelings were, and to also let them know that I just got tired of trying and basically beating my head up against the wall. And as I got older, I became more aware really what was going on with me. But I also grew up in a military family. I was an Army chaplain. So I grew up in the era of don't ask, don't tell. Yes. So I find no examples, none of what I was feeling inside. And I absolutely chose to keep it in because I did not know what the reaction would be if I spoke up. So I chose not to even risk it. And so that's my story. Right now, I have a wonderful relationship with my parents. Early on, it was a little rocky, but all I know and have always known that they loved me. So, you know, they definitely tried, and things are tremendously much better now.
Beautiful.
So, Carmen, can you take us back to the beginning of Harlem Pride? Just what was the impetus for forming it and starting it, and what were some of the obstacles and triumphs of getting it going?
Okay. Well, and this is where Adriane and John come in.
Yes.
Yes. So I moved to New York in 2009.
Okay.
And so I have been doing a documentary film series, and we first landed at the Dwyer when it first opened, and then moved to Casa Frila Gallery with Lawrence Rodriguez, who is the co-founder of Harlem Pride.
Yes.
We do an annual Pride exhibit. You know, initially I started doing the documentary films there. Myself and Michael E. Hodge, who is also
Michael, yes.
Part of Harlem Pride. We were doing Crucial Arts together. Crucial Arts was a film company nonprofit. So as we started working with Lawrence, we all realized, hey, wait a minute, we're all LGBTQ of some shape, form, or fashion. So we started working more closely together. I would go to Lawrence's house on the weekend, and we would just work on what either he needed or I needed, and just we created a bond. So for this particular art exhibit coming up in June of 2010, it was sort of animated or cartoon sort of drawings of erotic male phallic symbols, to put it that way. We had these huge phallic symbols within the art. And I said, Lawrence, I don't know if your typical wine and cheese crowd is going to appreciate this. How do we market this? And so we came up with the house party idea. Now, at the same time, my then girlfriend and I had been going to Billy's Black. Remember, Adriane, she had the poetry nights? And so I had done the initial logo and had it embroidered on a t-shirt. So I'm wearing a t-shirt to Billy's Black, and people are asking me, hey, is there gonna, and the t-shirt was the building and says Harlem Pride on it. So, you know, it already said Harlem Pride.
I still have my t-shirt.
One of the originals. And people were asking, is there gonna be a Harlem Pride? And I'm like, yeah. There's still more details to come. So after a couple of times of being asked that, I'll go back to Lawrence and I say, hey, is there any kind of a organized pride event here in Harlem? And he said no. So then we started calling this promotion of the exhibit Harlem Pride. And long story short, because there are a lot more details there, Lawrence's partner was part of the Block Association, and the Block Association already had a block party permit for that last Saturday in June.
Wow.
Which is why our event is the last Saturday of the last full weekend. So, full weekend being Saturday and Sunday will be that last Saturday. And the first time we had, depending on the newspaper, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 people come through.
Wow.
And we didn't expect, maybe a couple hundred, if that. Everybody who was involved, their friends. And so Adriane was on the board, John was on the board, and we had some other people on the board at the time. And then we also had an advisory board. So we had two separate entities, a slew of volunteers, and that block party was the impetus that started Harlem Pride. So we went ahead and got our 501c3, and the rest is history. We've been going ever since. And Adriane left Adriane Wright to continue to do the restaurant business. Eventually, Lawrence left to continue to pursue his art gallery. John was with us up until pre-COVID, I think, John.
Yeah. The 10th year, up to the 10th, 11th.
Up to the 11th, and now you're doing wonderful work at the Central Park Conservancy. And so, it has been an organization that I feel has helped start other organizations too. The visibility that Harlem Pride has gotten as an entity, I feel like it has helped put Harlem back on the map, if it was ever off, because your question, there always has been a comfort zone of being same gender loving LGBTQ in Harlem. Like nobody really is just gonna bother you for being who you are. Generally speaking, it's always been a safe place, whether you were going to a same gender loving LGBTQ specific spot or not, and like others have said, there were organic spaces, but I didn't remember if per se Lennox Lounge had a specific night.
Right.
Like that. But that's how we got started, and pretty much how we continued into getting the community center is with our visibility. When things would happen, they would say, hey, Harlem Pride, where I can go get an HIV test, or hey, Harlem Pride, do you know where I can do this, that, or the other in terms of resources? And so we just started acting as a de facto community center without really the trappings of it. We didn't have a large space, office space in 2014, that sort of thing. So we've just grown into being a more of a pillar of the community, so to speak, than just a pride organization that does things only in June.
Gotcha. Good one. And in terms of, let's say, relationships with other organizations, let's say in the community, like Harlem United, that is something that is happening.
Yes. So we have community partnerships, as we call them, with National Black Leadership Commission on Health, Ryan Health, Columbia University, New York Presbyterian, Harlem United. We have TD Bank. I don't know if you all have seen the commercial that's been running through June for Harlem Pride via TD Bank.
Yes.
So all sorts of community partnerships, and I'm sure I'm leaving some out. There are quite a few that we have nurtured, and they have nurtured us. And it's really just about the community. Adriane said it earlier about trying to provide what the community needs. And that's where we are right now, doing our best to bring up the rear, so to speak, and the gaps in services and programs for same gender loving LGBTQ community members.
Nice. And earlier, while we were offline, Richard, I remember you mentioning a particular event or strategy that you were working with is that Reverend James Forbes? Tell me about that.
Yeah, he's also a part of Healing of the Nation, and one of the things that I gravitated to that I really love is is community engagement, really reaching out to the community and figuring out how we would be able to start to collaborate on multiple things, especially in arts and culture. Arts is really big. Culture is really big when it comes to Harlem. And if you can get it right, as Harlem is the epicenter of Black culture to me, and so I usually actually say that if you can get it done here, it could be replicated all across the country and all around the world. For Reverend Forbes, he's with Healing of the Nation, and they have a relationship with Carnegie Hall for Juneteenth. And he invited us to actually come to reach out for folks that have never been to Carnegie Hall before, and giving them those free tickets and figuring out creative ways on how we would be able to share that experience. So I do a lot of stuff in the Broadway with Broadway League on Broadway, off Broadway shows, and figuring out how to do that. Working with the Harlem Fine Arts Show on giving art in Harlem a space. We actually have a 16-week.
Dion Clark, I guess, huh?
Yeah, Dion.
Okay. Yep. And Irene Gandy in terms of Broadway.
Irene. Yep.
Yes. Very nice.
Donna Kuhn, Tony Israel.
Nice.
Those are other folks that are actually really reaching out and saying, how can we, as a community, because folks throw that word around so, vividly, like, oh yeah, get the community to come. But if it's important to you, it becomes important to me. And I always say that to all of our Broadway producers and those theater owners. They'll say, we want the theater to look like New York City. All right, well, you guys are going to have to really come out and reach. I mean, do you want Harlem to actually come? Do you want the Bronx to stay in the Bronx? I don't need to be harassed in Times Square. About, tickets, please. It's very much, thank you very much for coming. I mean, all of those things are really important. And those are the things that we actually have and talk about. And job creation. I mean, again, there are a lot of folks within our community that don't know that these careers are available to them, and training, and all of those different types of things. So we have those types of conversations.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And Adriane, I was thinking. So certainly we do have, let's say, lists when we're having, let's say, Black History Month or even some Juneteenth celebrations. A list of Black-owned establishments. Now, during, let's say, Pride Month, are there a list of spaces that might be part of the LGBTQ community?
There is a pseudo list, if you will. I think if someone takes the initiative to go around and say, "Oh, I want to include this space or that space," that's pretty much how it goes. I mean, we stand a better chance of being, quote unquote, actually listed as a Black-owned restaurant, but in the queer community, it's almost discerning in the sense that you have so many establishments jumping on the bandwagon that you don't know which one is kind of really real in the sense that you but there's so many events and so many things going on, and it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this for Pride Month, when they are not really part of the community as a whole.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I was reading something in an article, I guess, the other day about what the term they used was rainbow washing, where, establishments put the rainbow flag in there, obviously to promote business. And I guess this article was saying that it's not as effective as it used to be because people are demanding more than just, a superficial presentation. They're wanting to see establishments actually be more involved in their stance about inclusivity. So I'm wondering if anyone else has any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think it has to be a part of the DNA of the company, the organization. And if it isn't, it's lip service. I mean, again, we're not, Black just during February. We're not just gay.
Right.
365 days of the year. So I'm looking at you, all of those other days on one, how I'm treated, how I'm being engaged, and the representation. So if you're not doing any of those things, you're coming up short. And I think moving forward, and we've already have this list, we don't spend our money where we're not welcome. And I think, again, that to be stated boldly.
Well, one thing we used to have on the Harlem Pride website, and Richard had helped us with this at one point, and then of course, post-COVID, so many establishments closed, but we used to have a directory with restaurants, and we also used to go around with a decal with the logo. So not just was it quote unquote like that rainbow that a lot of restaurants would throw up, but it would be the Harlem Pride logo on a decal in the window. But COVID, we didn't restart that, but this is giving me the idea that maybe we should do that going into the next year, which will be our 15th year. So that might be a good time to bring it back.
Beautiful.
I agree. Just to kind of piggyback on the previous comment about working with other, I'm just going to say we work with other businesses during this Pride Month that are not LGBTQ. Sorry, and we did an event, and as you can imagine, they wanted to be a part of it, and of course, in us navigating and working through it, the places that are not end up falling short. Just like Richard said, if you're not in it, then you're not in it. So it's like you want to generate those dollars, but you just can't do it on a whim like that. So needless to say, it was a bar crawl, and of course we actually ended up with the largest part of the turnout because people know what they know. So what can you do?
Love it. Yes. So NightWatchman, how we doing? Want to do our little rapid round, buddy?
I think it's time for the rapid wrap up.
All right, here we go. So, like I said, out there on the West Coast, because I'm going to allow you to get some sleep in that bad boy. Carmen, what are some of your parting words for us?
My motto: to thine own self be true. Because I feel like unless you can do that, you can't really walk authentically in this world. And authentically doesn't necessarily mean you got to be loud and proud, but just be yourself, do the work, and figure out who you are and own that. So I would say that, because once you do that, I think then the rest is gravy.
Beautiful. I see NightWatchman put up where we can reach Harlem Pride. That was good. Okay. And of course, Richard, do tell.
Well, first, I want to say thank you, gratitude to you guys giving us the platform to be able to even showcase who we are. I really do think representation really does matter. I'm always about community. As I said, I love community engagement. You can sit on the bus and hear these amazing stories from both men and women who have lived, in Harlem. As I said, I've lived in Harlem longer than I lived anywhere else, but I had this amazing conversation with Miss Vi Higginson, who,
yes, Mama Foundation. Go ahead.
My family lived on this block for 5 generations. We've been here for 100 years, so you just getting here. And I that because, again, storytelling, history, preservation, is really key and important. I always salute Mr. Reddick, because I love his stories anytime he's actually doing these presentations. It's just wonderful to actually hear that we exist before you know, all these untold stories that we can start to connect. So I just wanted to say gratitude and thank you.
Excellent, excellent. And one of the two OGs, Adriane, do tell us.
You know, like Richard said, this was a very welcoming platform for us to kind of have this, if you will, family reunion. It was really good. So I thank you for connecting us all, and I hope we actually can you know, have this experience again beyond just today.
You coming back, and you coming at the beginning of the month, all right?
Right.
All
So
right.
you heard it there. We have to have you early on, not June, end of June, beginning of July, but the beginning of June, so we can
Yes.
actually promote the events that are happening next year. So
You-
2024, we're already slotting you in.
Absolutely.
All right, great.
So John, OG. Uh-oh. I think you're on mute. There you
talking
go.
about coming out, and my whole life of coming out, whether it was professional, sexual, culturally, it was all in Harlem. And Harlem's always been a very special place to me. All these connections we just have had today all happened here. And so I always tell people I see Harlem as a brand greater than Chanel. And I always try to treat it that way. And I really encourage people to, if we give it its best, it will shine. All the things we're talking about, we'd love to advance. I think giving it our full heart and our full focus, as you know, Curtis and others who've been sort of working in Harlem for years, I feel like we're still on the cusp of doing great things. And so I've enjoyed this conversation and reconnecting with a lot of you.
Excellent, excellent. Night Watchman, take
Well,
us
you
home.
have been listening to Soul Lounge Primetime on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem, always on Monday nights on the radio at 7 p.m. and live streaming at 8 p.m. on YouTube and Facebook. And you can find us on all your favorite podcast platforms, including iHeartRadio, Google Music, iTunes, Spotify. Ask Siri about us, ask Alexa, ask anybody. We have the best conversation about Harlem.
Yay!
Guaranteed.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us. See us on Monday night and come back next time because we have another great show next week. We don't even know what it is yet.
We don't know. But guys, this has been great. Love you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.